I was interested in Russian history because, in part, I was born in the former Soviet Union, Ukraine. So I studied Russian history and Ottoman history at the University of Chicago. From the very beginning, I was interested not in Russia proper, not in Russian people. I was interested in Russia's periphery, in non-Russian peoples of the Russian Empire. So my first book was actually the history of the Kalmyk people. Obscure people in the West, no one heard the name before. There were two approaches that separated me from most other. One is that I also studied Turkish, Ottoman Turkish, so I was able to read other sources other than Russian sources. And related to it, the second, more important probably, approach was that I tried to visualize and narrate and understand the history of the region from the point of view of these native peoples as well. My second book that came out 10 years later, and it's called Russia's Steppe Frontier. And this was a comprehensive study of the entire steppe region populated by similar peoples as Kalmyks. What I was trying to do is to conceptualize Russian history in a different way. And so what I decided to do is to write the history of this frontier and the history of Russia's expansion into it. And from there I made another leap into the history of the North Caucasus. What provoked that interest, of course, were the Chechen wars of the 1990s. To write the history of a region which is very fragmented, where there live many different peoples who speak different languages, who never had a nation state, was a real challenge. I decided to choose one particular individual, and this was an officer in the Russian army in the early 19th century who in the end turns out to be actually of Chechen origin, and who apparently was tormented by his dual identity. And in the end, he decided to desert the Russian army and fled to the mountains to join the Highlanders. But I thought it's really captured the nature of the region, the people who found themselves in between the native societies and the Russian society. So my new project, which I began to work on recently, is really trying to understand where does Russian Empire as such fits into history of empires. We usually use, of course, European empires as our standard model against which we measure all other empires. And so what I try to do is to actually emphasize a different perspective and place the Russian Empire in the context of other Eurasian and Asian empires, to compare it with the Ottoman Empire and the Persian Empire and Chinese Empire. Needless to say, all the research is one way or the other reflected in my teaching. So Russian Empire was always a very complex kind of political entity because it included members of all major religions, hundreds of different ethnic groups and languages. My research always asks these kind of questions. What does it mean to be a subject of the Russian Empire if you're non-Russian? When I teach, my research allows me to provide certain insights and perspectives in this particular aspect of Russia.